and I'm a gearhead. Mechanical things interest me. I just started gathering history, looking up. I went to various places. There was information in the archives of the local newspaper. Went to Bishop Museum. They had information about it there, the history of it, and just the technologies that they were going to try to use here. In the beginning, I was a supporter of what they were trying to do because it seemed like a good idea. I had no idea, and they had no idea in the beginning, the dangers involved with geochemistry here. And just to make this clear, this geothermal here is unique. It is unique in its toxicity. It's unique in its temperature. And most of the rest of the world gets along with geothermal pretty well because of the differences. Here we're boiling salt water, which gives you high levels of hydrogen sulfide, lethal levels of hydrogen sulfide. They didn't expect that. We have problems here because they based the construction of the plant on data from an HGPA well, which is a well that was drilled with federal dollars, an exploration well drilled with federal dollars. They took the geochemistry of that, and that's how they designed the plant. Well, when they actually got into the main well field, the characterization was nothing like what they were actually faced with. So the changes that they had, the patches they had to put on the plant, left the plant unable to deal with the reality of the resource. Temperatures were higher, the H2S levels were higher, the corrosiveness of it was higher, just a whole long list of anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And in the beginning, I have some feeling for Ormat because, of course, in the beginning, Ormat was nothing more than a generator builder. They supplied the generators, and therefore they held a 49% interest in PGV. They were on the hook because they were told something incorrect. And they went ahead and designed the plant to fit. And then it was just hell on wheels. To the fact that they wouldn't shut it down, and the people who were actually responsible for misinforming Ormat didn't take responsibility, and they pushed ahead. That's where we are. They just kept pushing ahead. I'm sorry.
Which people?
Well, that's kind of interesting. Arioshi, the governor then, has some significant responsibility there. Arthur Lyman has some significant responsibility. And Pahoa Land and Development Corporation, which is Arthur Lyman, the Lyman family. It was just kind of this cascade of lies. I mean, you know what it is about lying? You know, it's the first one, it's the slippery slope. Well, I mean, this is a classic example of they told the first one, and from there on out, it was all downhill. So, it's going to be, it's been interesting, it's getting more interesting the more time goes by here. We have limited time here, and I could drone on about the history of the slimhole project. I'll just touch on that briefly. After the first oil shock in the early 70s, federal government starts pouring money out for alternative energy projects. State of Hawaii gets one. They drill about 12 exploratory wells around Puna. The only one that actually flows is the one that PGV is on now, that area. All of the rest of them were dry holes. They were hot but dry. No fluids, which tells you something. The other thing I want to point out when they talk about this massive expansion of geothermal, where I got the map. You start here at Cape Puna and go up to Kilauea. That's 26 miles. Today, there is lava flowing 12 miles of that to Pahoa. Lava running underground and then coming out and running on the ground. Okay? So, give or take, you got about 12 miles left. So, if you were going to build something, just how close to Pahoa would you like to get? First question. Right? You got 12 miles. So how close do you want to get? Let's say 10. Let's say we have actually 10 miles that you could explore for geothermal resource. Well, they already have. The Slimhole project did that and came up with nothing.
What year was that?
That was 79 through 84. All of the areas that they felt had potential at the time they drilled. So when someone starts telling you that there is going to be 500 megawatts drawn out of the East Rift Zone, they're going to get 500 megawatts of power out of an area that's 10 miles long. Do the math on that. Again, this is a part of this thing where you tell that first lie, and that I know who told that, because I found the letters when I went to Honolulu in the mid-'80s. They were closing up the last proposed cable project. And I went into the office and they were closing it up. And it was just all laying out on tables and you could take whatever you wanted. And I did. There's this guy named Jon Olsen who was involved with the university's Department of Volcanology, or geophysics as they called it back then. And he'd written all kinds of letters to the Department of Energy extolling the huge amounts of geothermal that was available in the East Rift Zone. But he didn't have any data to prove that. And of course, after the Slimhole project goes around and drills all these holes and gets nothing, the whole thing just kind of collapses in on itself. Then the plant here has all these problems, kind of terminating in 1991 with the blowout when they drilled KS8. Well, first they drilled KS7. And KS7, they hit the resource at 1,700 feet. That gives you an idea how shallow it potentially is under that, where they are. They injured 2 workers. The blowout, 17. The blowout preventer held. They immediately abandoned the well. And I could get into the reasons why there's physics of why they would abandon the well. Has to do with well control. If you want to talk about it later, we can do that. But then instead of learning something from that experience, they jumped right over and drilled KS8. They hit the resource at about 5,500 feet, and it was even more powerful than the resource that they had gotten out of KS7. And it destroyed it came up the wellbore, blew out the drilling pipe, destroyed the blowout preventer. The blowout preventer, along with chunks of the rig deck, were just laying all around the rig. The reason I know this is because my house at the time was sitting up on a little pu'u, and I had a direct line of sight to the drill rig. And in fact, when it blew out, I had some friends over at the house. They were sitting on the couch. The wall behind them was glass, and it looked right out on the wall. And I was looking directly at it when it exploded. So I got out the binoculars and looked at it, and the whole thing was just trying to help. So anyway, they managed to finally, after 41 hours of just wild venting, and of course everybody evacuating, they managed to divert the flow, and then finally 2 days later they managed to cap it in. After they capped it, the upper part of the wellbore began to rise. The upper 300 feet began to bulge up. They had 2 D9s on site. They parked them on top of a thing called a cellar. It's a cement casing that surrounded the wellbore, and they took these 2 D9s and just basically parked them blade down on top of the cellar. And then they started pumping water down the wellbore to cool it, to cool the resource. They didn't have enough water on site, even though their permit said that they had to drill a water well for specifically this purpose. They hadn't done it. So they took county water, pumped it down the hole. There was another agricultural well somewhere, a small one, about 3 inches. They got a hold of that, and then they frantically started drilling a 6-inch water well. And so 2 months later, they get this water well going, and now they finally have the well quenched, and they can abandon it. But had those dozers not been there, the potential for that still going off today, uncontrollably, exists. If they had lost the upper section of the well, it would have been impossible to shut it. And there is an example of that in Nevada, and I also understand there's other places in the world where they have lost the upper section of the well, of a geothermal well, and they just sit there like a giant geyser. Oh, we're dancing with the devil. There you go. Mother Nature. So anyway, that's kind of the bad news side of this. I'll take questions when I'm done babbling, if I can just babble on for just a few more. One of the things that I would like to get out of this, and I'm making myself available to anybody who wishes to engage. There's a thing about if you ask dumb questions, you get dumb answers. And to this point, the people on the geothermal side, the pro-geothermal side, have succeeded based on our inability, the communities, to ask good questions. And I would like to try and correct that. 51% of smart is knowing what you're dumb at. Right? And if we start asking good questions of the wrong people, they're going to go away. An example of this, the other night they held a very well-managed meeting in Leilani. They meaning the pro-geothermal people. Much of it was half the truth. And if you had been in a position to ask the question about the other half, they would have folded their tent and disappeared. I will give you an example of one of the things, and it's actually a positive thing that I found out by listening to Mike. Got his last name. Kaleikini, right. I have long suspected, and other people, that the area that PGV is using as a resource is very small. And I think in the last, just in this last month, the answers to that question have been delivered. And their last well, they were attempting to find additional high temperature resource, and they failed to do that by drilling outside of the area that they are sucking off of now.
Is that the K-15?
Yeah, the one that was up on the poop. The resource is cooling. It's gone to nearly 700 degrees to somewhere in the 500 degree range in the time that they've been running it. Mike used a word that I had never heard him use before. He spoke of managing the resource. For those of you who don't understand what that means, an example. Bill Gates doesn't manage his money, right? I mean, management entails or alludes to a scarcity. You manage your bank account because it's not full all the time, right? You have to manage it. In combination with using that word, he said that they were not going to look to increase production, which tells me that they have an inability to cause heat exchange within the reservoir. There's heat, there's lava there somewhere, there's hot rock, there's water coming in, and now they're concerned about running that heat source down too rapidly to recharge it so they can go on generating. And he made it very clear that they have no intention of being part of the 500 megawatt project, if there was ever to be one.
And they're not going to drill again right now.
Well, they're going to have to continue to drill new production wells and use the old ones for re-injection wells, just because the wells casings wear out. There's a very elaborate process here because of the fines that they were levied by EPA against them for violations of the Clean Water Act. And we did get to prove that they were contaminating the aquifer, leaking, and so they made them do this elaborate thing. And again, we can sit down and explain to you for those of you who are interested. Just know that EPA intervened. Much of the good stuff that was happening out there is because EPA became involved. So our letter writing campaign is basically wrong. Other things.
When did EPA get involved?
EPA?
Yeah, when did they get involved?
94. It started in 93 after the blowout, because with the blowout we were inalienably able to prove that they were contaminating the groundwater, that they did not have an emergency response plan for us, that they did not even have an emergency response plan for their own people in the plant. So EPA came out, they helped them draft an emergency response plan for the plant. They drafted an emergency response plan for the community, and that's circulating out there. We did digitize that, and it's available. I think Bob's put it up somewhere online, I think. Yeah, okay. So, and we can look to re-engage the EPA, or for technical reasons we may not be able to engage them directly, but we can certainly engage the civil rights people, because the county has never implemented that plan. They've never implemented it, they've never demonstrated it, and that makes for a good emergency response plan. We have to be able to demonstrate that it will work. So